Um, in my study of sports psychology, which is kind of been my hobby for 25 years, every single sports psychology book, every performance psychology lecture I've ever heard, every single time somebody talks about peak performance, they always, invariably, they mention something to do with visualization. The very best athletes in the world use this as part of their, it's part of what they do. I remember I was at a conference in Hawaii. What was I don't remember the conference, even what it was, because I didn't really want to be there too much except for a couple things, one thing that I was presenting, and then there was a guy from the U named Henshin, who is the sports psychologist for the U's gymnastics. He's a sports psychologist for the Jazz. He works with a lot of athletes there at the U, and he's really well known, at least in this state, and has worked with quite a few Olympic athletes. And anyway, he said really there's 5 things that you do for getting an athlete to perform at his or her peak psychologically, because as we all know, mental's to physical like 5 is to 1 in athletics. If you think that you're going to be doing well, the likelihood of you doing well increases a lot. And so he mentioned that there are 5 things, and we played with several of the things, but he said one of the most powerful things that you can do, I mean, he mentioned things like stay in the moment, keep your self-talk right. Let's see, what were some of the other things that he mentioned? But anyway, this final one was mental rehearsal. In other words, seeing it before it happens, seeing it clearly in your mind. And I want to explore how we do this, because this works not just for performance in an athletic kind of situation. This works universally. It works for everything we do. Stephen Covey said, you know, he mentioned in his book the 7 habits. The first habit is to have the vision of what you want to have. You see it first in your head. His comment was, all things are created twice, first in your mind, and then it becomes out there. And the more clearly we can see this in our mind's eye, and we're going to practice this, the more the subconscious goes, oh, okay, that's how I'm supposed to make it look. That's a clear picture, okay. And then your body follows, or your performance follows, or your behaviors follow. Does that make sense so far? So we want to, as much as possible, have an absolutely clear picture of how that happens, how we want it to look, prior to when we want it to, when we're going to actualize it on our own stage rather than our mind stage. So I want to go through this. This came from a book called Peak Performance, Mental Training of the World's Greatest Athletes. And I apologize for this copy, and somebody, I think I lent this book to somebody and I never got it back. I don't know who I lent it to, but nothing makes me more angry under the sun than I lend a book and I never get it back. So this copy is, I was going to make a slightly better copy because this is kind of losing its luster, but hopefully we can read this together. And it is so very good, and I want to I'll read a little bit and then we'll discuss some of it, because I want us to be really clear on how to do this. It's really easy. And we all do it. I mean, if you daydream, you have a pretty good idea of how this should happen. But we're going to make it a little more structured We're going to create our own place in our mind's eye that will become our stage. And then you become the director. It's kind of cool. It's really kind of cool. So let's read through this. It says, mental rehearsal is often referred to as the master skill because the development of so many other peak performance skills is contingent upon it. It's a technique used by peak performers to not only improve skills they already have, but also develop new skills. A renowned Chinese pianist who placed second in the 1958 Tchaikovsky competition was imprisoned shortly thereafter during the Cultural Revolution. He was held for 7 years and denied for that entire time the opportunity to play the piano. Soon after his release, he was back on tour and judged to be musically superior to the time before his imprisonment. His response, to stunned critics was that he had practiced in his mind every day for 7 years. And we've all heard stories of this probably. I remember reading stories about people who were in concentration camps and they would golf 9 holes, or 18 holes in their head every day that they were in these concentration camps, and coming home and being as good as or better golfers than they were prior to that time. There's a lot of kind of instances like that where the idea of just having the ability to think and visualize created the outcome in really powerful ways. Mental rehearsal, the process of imprinting mental images of successful action in the mind's eye, is used by peak performers to practice mentally positive outcomes and achievements they ultimately do attain in reality. Mental rehearsal is far from casual daydreaming. It requires concentrated and repeated practice. In mental rehearsal, clarity of the image is utmost importance. This is really key. Whether your goal relates to a personal relationship, artistic activity, business dealing, athletic contest, or any other endeavor, the image must be sharp and clear, and it must depict extraordinary performance. And that just makes sense. I mean, if you were thinking to yourself, okay, I'm going to picture myself performing mediocre in some outcome, well, your subconscious is going, okay, whatever you want me to do, that's the engine that I'll run. So you visualize the absolute best, because it's not hearing, the subconscious isn't going, I don't think we can do that. So you picture it in your mind's eye as clearly as you can, as perfectly as you can create it. I remember once I was watching I mentioned this in the stress management class when we play with this subconscious mind just very briefly, but I remember hearing about Greg Louganis, and I don't know if any of you remember Greg Louganis, greatest diver of all time by far. He's earned more gold medals easily than anyone else ever has. And in between dives, he was at a meet of some kind. I don't know if it was a qualifier or anything or what it was, but I remember watching on TV. He'd do this dive, and then it was a platform. I don't know how high it was, but he'd do the dive, and then they showed him he would get out of the pool and he'd go into this like little jacuzzi-sized pool, and he'd put some headphones on and he'd close his eyes and he'd just sit there. Kind of like this. He didn't watch anyone else. He just sat there with his headphone on. And somebody asked him later on, they said, interviewing him, what did you do when you were in that? Did you sleep? Did you? And he said, no, I was putting in my mind's eye, I was seeing myself perform my next dive. And they said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, I saw myself, in my imagination, I saw myself jumping, I saw myself twisting, I saw myself flipping, I saw myself going into the water, I saw no splash, and I kept running that film over and over in my head. And then, when he gets up on the platform, he just follows through on that image. And if it worked for Greg Louganis, I would say That's a pretty good reference. Okay, also essential to successful mental rehearsal is control. Control is the manipulation of the image to the extent the image becomes, to the mind, reality. You might first watch yourself achieve your goal as if you were only an observer. Then remove yourself from the observer's role and imagine yourself in complete detail actually achieving the objective. Now, we're going to explore how this would look, but what I want you to get into your mind is the idea of a stage. Now, there's two components. If you think of not the newer ones, but some of the older movie theaters where there actually was a stage and then you'd have a screen that would come down. And the way I like to do this, and I've heard, and I didn't make this up, but this comes from reading other people's teaching it and writing about it in books, is you create, the two ways that you can do this is you act like first you're in the audience and there's no one there but you. And you're looking at a huge, gigantic screen, you know, like at a movie theater. And you kind of put a little border around it of gold, you know, or some color that's really nice for you. But you see yourself, so at first what he's saying is you first see yourself kind of like you're back looking at the movie that you're trying to create. Okay? So it's like, okay, we're in the scenery and there's the screen, and you're watching yourself do that thing. You're watching that performance happen. Then, the other part of that, what he just said, is you then step onto the stage and you become the performer. So at first, you're watching the performance. Second, you are the performer. You're actually getting into the act of, okay, I'm diving, I'm twisting, I'm flipping, I'm going into the water, I see the judges putting up the 10, or whatever it is for you. And your subconscious mind's going, oh, this is happening. It's not thinking, that's an interesting thing somebody else is doing. It's as if you're really doing it. See, there's a lot of research that says if you imagine it, or you see it, or you experience it, it's the same to your system. It thinks you're doing it. And so once the subconscious mind thinks that you're doing it, then it becomes part of you. It doesn't work at it anymore. Does that make sense? Like driving. You don't have to work at driving, you just drive. Well, that's how it is with any kind of performance. Does that make sense so far? Yes? Okay. Questions to that point? It's really easy. It's really not difficult. It's really cool. Okay, research has shown that imagined events imprinted deeply in the mind's eye are recorded by the brain and central nervous system as memories. That is, they are not distinguished from actual physical experience. I keep seeing research study after research study that says that's the case. That when we imagine it, our nervous system, our system, all thinks we're really doing it. And hypnosis is a perfect example of this. Okay. So, how do we do this? He has several steps, and we're going to go through these here in just a minute. He says, first put yourself into a deeply relaxed, receptive state by listening to soothing music, slowing down your breathing, or using any formal or informal relaxation techniques. And so what I recommend, what I strongly recommend for you, is just do the meditation that we've learned at the beginning of the semester, that you've been practicing usually, because it works perfectly to put you in the right state for imagery. We mentioned before that there are several purposes for that meditation, you know, for insights, for relaxation, but it also puts you in a perfect state for imagery. You kind of block out, or you don't block out, but it happens that the outside of you tends to become, you know, just background noise, background. And what you are able to focus on when you're meditating is much more clear. It's amazing how much more clear. And some of you have probably noticed this when you meditate, that you just, wow, thinking more clearly, and I'm able to process things or set goals or whatever when I'm doing this meditation. So that's the first step. And then, going to the second page, see in your mind those actions that you want to take place. See them clearly and in detail. Concentrate on them. Change or modify the images in any way that feels right to you at the moment. Become aware of the feelings that you have, the feelings you associate with your particular goal or activity. Let both your body and mind experience whatever is there, whatever you have in mind. So you almost, it's like you're living it inside. You're experiencing it kinesthetically. Not just watching it, but you're getting all of your senses, all of your imagined physiology. What would this feel like to be hitting this shot, or to be riding a horse in a certain way, or hitting a golf ball, or whatever it is that we love to do, that we would like to do better. Or doing a test. And you see yourself do the test, and then you see yourself confidently finishing, going, yeah, I got that one. And then seeing the score of the A that somebody gives to you, or the 100% or whatever. And you keep confidently saying to yourself, as you're watching yourself take this test, I can do this, I remember easily. You're not doing this for your conscious mind, remember. You're doing this for your subconscious, and as you keep visualizing that, your subconscious mind is going to go, oh, we're taking a test, I can do this, piece of cake, no problem. And your memory will happen better. No stress will happen. Experience the image with other senses, not just visually. Feel things, listen for sounds. You might even smell things as well. Imagining is a multi-sensory experience. Use all of your senses. Tell yourself aloud that you deserve to achieve this goal. You deserve not only the process, but also the resulting success. The goal you're imaging, the goal you will achieve. Expect and believe that the positive outcome will occur. This positive belief serves to reinforce positive outcome. And so that expectancy is kind of the emotion that you want to have that pushes that image into the subconscious mind and embeds it in there. It's like you're putting the seed in there. The emotion is what plants it. Yes, this is something I absolutely would love to have, or be, or do. This picture here. And then, yeah, you've probably had images in your mind before of things you thought, yeah, that'd be nice. Maybe, that'd be nice. No planting, that'll never happen. But then later on, you have the thought, you know, I can do that. Why not? You have those thoughts. That's what starts to plant that reality, is that thought. Yeah, I can have that. Why not me? You know, I deserve it. That's what sticks the seed in the ground. Okay? It's really cool. It's really interesting. So here's what I'd like us to do. I'm going to hand this out to you. I'd like you to take everything else out of in front of you. Completely just have nothing in front of you except a pen. I give you 5. Okay, now what I would like you to do with this, I'd like you to turn it over to the back side. the part that there's nothing written on there. And I want you to think of something that you would love to be, do, or have. That you currently don't, or maybe you do, but you would like to have in a better way somehow. I'm trying to think of, maybe you're an outstanding athlete, but you can see room for improvement somewhere in some aspect of your game. Maybe you're an artist and you think, man, it's kind of like Leonardo da Vinci. You know, he used to think, he did this process. He would brainstorm and he'd come up with all the different ideas of what he'd like to create, and then he would create a clear mental picture, and then he would see that in whatever it was that he was going to work on. He would see that picture from the beginning. Did you have a question, Bob?
No. There goes my earring.
Took your earring off.
No.
So I want you to write something down. Something, maybe it's just how you'll perform on an upcoming test or something. Maybe it's a paper that you have to do that you haven't really thought about how to structure it. See, this is how powerful this can be. Let's say that you've got a paper in some class and it's just not hitting you how to put it together. Well, what you do is you imagine yourself with the finished product. And then what happens is, in the moments when you're not thinking of it, your subconscious mind will pop into your head the ways to structure it. That's how it works. That's the process that we're trying to do, is we're trying to get this into the subconscious, which is way more powerful, so it can figure out how to make things work. We don't have to worry about how to make things work. We focus on what's the end that I want. And that's the picture we throw in. So I want you on your paper to have something clearly in mind of an end that you would like to see. Something you can do, be, or have. It could be with relationships. It could be maybe you've got a situation with somebody who isn't right where you'd like it to be. Now, you can't affect them, but you can affect how you are with them. And so you can, that's kind of a doing or a being kind of thing.
So it has to be something that's completely within
Sorry?
It has to be something that's completely within our control. We can wish to want to fly.
Yeah, and like, if I wanted it, we're not to the point where I can say, I want rain tomorrow.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten to that point yet. I don't doubt that somewhere 100 years from now they'll be doing that, where they'll be disappearing clouds when they want a sunny day. I don't sense that we're there yet. So, that would. So what, and again, that's my own limits that I'm putting on things. But I would say, yes, the things that they have to be realistically doable for you now. You know, and I would say do something that's fairly, you know, not easy, but within your realm of accomplishing without a whole lot of extra effort. In other words, you're going to take the test anyway, or you're going to be performing in the game anyway, or you're going to be with that person anyway. Those are just part. So let's create a picture of how you would like it to be ideally. Okay? Now that you have something on there, I want you to just think about that and maybe write a few comments under that for how it would look for that to, what would be happening if that were actualized. What would it show up? What are some of the characteristics of this being completely, done? It's completed, like the Greg Louganis. He sees himself diving the perfect dive. What would that look like? So he's twisting perfectly, he's flipping perfectly, he goes in the water and no splash, those kind of details. Just write a few down that come to your mind of how this would look in a perfect, ideal situation. So once you have a few things, so you have a pretty good idea of the picture that you're going to put on the screen. Let me just tell you a really quick story to give you kind of an idea, because really I think we all do this to some extent, making this a conscious endeavor. Really, this is interesting. I think we do this a lot in the negative way. We think, oh man, she's not gonna like this, what I say to her at all. Or, I know I'm gonna get fat by eating this. Or whatever. We do this a lot, and we picture ourselves going, okay, that's gonna turn to fat. Or, I'm for sure gonna be shy in that situation. And we picture ourselves going to the event, or we picture ourselves coming up to the public speaking, and we see ourselves getting totally nervous, and then our body goes, okay, whatever you say, I'll make you nervous if that's what you want. So we do this a lot. The experience that I had, one experience, I like this process, I use it a lot, but one experience I had when we were redoing this building, we were in another building for a year or so while they were remodeling this thing. It's about 5 years ago. And the thought occurred to me, we have a lot of great stuff on exercise. We have the world-class exercise lab downstairs. We have a great gym. We have nutritionists who are the smartest people in the world to do with nutrition here. We don't have anything to do with stress. I thought, what would be fun to have? And it occurred to me, a place where people can come to relax. And I had never seen that before, except at BYU they had a biofeedback lab, which was just a place where you could go and there's a computer and you stick your fingers in the things and you see, you play with the stuff that shows up on the screen, biofeedback. We have one in here, we don't use it very much. But I had never seen anything like that anywhere. I thought, that would be fun. Spas kind of do this, sort of. How can we make a spa? And so I pictured, and there was no room for me to do this when they were redesigning the thing. There were no spaces. And I went, I still want one. So I put that picture, I did exactly what we're going to do, what we're talking about. I created that picture in my mind's eye. I said, I don't know where I'm going to put this, but this would be what I would like to have. And I pictured 2 or 3 things. I pictured a place where people would come in, relax, and I didn't even know what it would look like. And I kept seeing this over and over. I would meditate in my morning meditation. I would always include this. Next thing I know, there's a room right there, that little one, that nobody had any plans for. It was just an empty room. And I thought, I'd like that one. And so I talked to the chair jack and said, can I do this in there? And he said, I've never heard of that. That's a pretty interesting thing. Okay, it's yours. And then I pictured, I want it bigger. Next thing I know, this room next to it was a conference room nobody was using. And I thought, why can't we have that too? And then I started to think, well, what would that look like? And I would keep picturing it and keep picturing, you know, what. And next thing I know, we have access to a lot of money to buy stuff. And next thing I know, somebody donates a $5,000 massage chair. I was just talking to him and I said, man, I would really like a massage chair. And he said, you know, I have $5,000 that I need to spend by next month. And if I don't spend it, we lose it. And
Oh my God.
some of you know, Ken Johnson is the one who donated that to us. We were just talking, and I said, he said, I'll get it for you. I've done very little to make that place happen, and it is a happening place. And we're now expanding. We're going to be painting it this weekend, and we're getting, I mean, all kinds of good things. And all I do is I just keep saying to myself, I know we can make this better, and pretty soon we're going to expand into the new building over there, and we're going to expand into the Davis campus. I mean, all these things. And all I just keep doing is going, how would I like this to look? That would be cool. And things keep happening. It's really, really, I don't try very hard. It's amazing how many people, I had a guy yesterday said, I really want to work in your lab. I have some extra time, can I? Okay, come on in, help us out.
So are you ever going to try and get a relaxation center next to the testing centers?
Yeah, that would be the ideal place, wouldn't it? No, they're very stingy over there with their space. I've tried visualizing that, and I just keep getting a blank wall. That's one of those, not possible, not going to happen right now. So here's what I'd like us to do, and I don't want you to, don't take this really seriously. I mean, serious means you're resisting. Be as playful as possible. What we're going to do, we're just going to sit for a couple minutes, and I want you to actually do, you know, the meditation, do your mantra meditation for a couple minutes, and then in the time that we have, and I know we're kind of short, so we're going to we're not going to do any writing on this. I'll let you take it home and do. But then for just like no more than 2 or 3 minutes, I want you to imagine the stage and put yourself, and see yourself doing that thing on the stage, and run that loop film several times. You know, quite a few times. And all the while, as you're seeing it happening, you're going, oh, that's great, I know it's me. I can do that, or I can have that, or I can be that. Okay? And as you see that happening, then kind of move yourself onto the stage, and you be the actor or actress. Be that person, and really experience yourself kinesthetically, all of your senses, get into the role of successfully doing that. And then run that loop over and over and over, joyfully. You know, have a blast with it. And then at some point I'll say, okay, let's slowly return to normal consciousness, and then we'll kind of end that. So what I'd like you to do is just sit back in the back of your, sit so your butt's back in the back of your seat, so you're sitting back up and down mostly. Don't fall asleep. And so begin with just for a couple minutes, just kind of focus inwardly. We're all good at this now. Focus inwardly, and then just start repeating the mantra, any mantra that you would like to use right now. And then at some point I'll say, okay, just start into your visualization. Now, I just have one quick question for you, kind of an assessment. Did anyone have a hard time imagining? Was that challenging for you to be able to put that mental picture in your head? Yes?
As a matter of fact, I kept seeing other things happen that I kept thinking, why is that coming in? To play like falling, or
Oh, yeah.
is that just because it's deeply ingrained in me?
Sure, yeah, you have to discipline your mind to stay focused. Some people say, well, I don't know how to imagine, or I can't picture things. And for some people it is a little harder. And the way it helps me to do this, because the harder you try, the harder it is. It's another one of those, trying hard is going to get you less than if you just allow things to happen. But if you pictured for a second where your car is, or the color of your front door of your house, every one of you can picture that in your mind. Our mind works primarily in pictures. And so if you picture something that is easy to think of, and that's the same thing. That's what you're doing, is you're putting, you're just, instead of picturing something you can remember, you're putting something new on there, but with that same amount of ease that you remember where your car is. Oh yeah, I remember, okay, picture where I put my car, picture the color of my car, picture where it's parked in the parking lot. Oh yeah. It's the same thing when you're thinking forward with how you'd like it to be. That's the same level of intensity, or the same level of picture making. You're just creating it instead of remembering. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is just take a few minutes sometime between now and Friday, fill that out and bring that with you on Friday, and practice it a couple more times on your own. Okay? Have a great today. We'll see you next time. We still